Today I want to share with you 5 green cooking habits that are easy to implement in your kitchen starting today. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. If at any time you want to jump ahead in this video, be sure to check the chapter timestamps, which I'll have in the description and in the pinned comment below. Green tip number 1, start 3 scrap bags. 1 scrap bag is going to be for your chicken carcass and scraps. That's what I've got here. And I keep this in my freezer. I've just got a little kind of Rubbermaid type plastic container. And in this, I have my chicken carcasses. I like to save 3 chicken carcass along with any other little scraps that haven't been used or that aren't really usable. And I just keep this in my freezer. And once I have 3 carcass, I like to make chicken bone broth. Yes, you can make chicken bone broth with 1 carcass, but I find that making it with 3 carcass makes a beautiful, rich chicken bone broth. And I also like to throw in a few chicken feet. And I want to mention that as I go through all of these green tips, I will have recipe links to all of these in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, in addition to this scrap bag, I like to have 2 more scrap bags. One, I like to keep all of my vegetable scraps in. And the only reason I don't mix them with my chicken scraps is because sometimes I like to use my vegetable scraps for things other than making bone broth. I can pull out the scraps and add them to my stock pot when I am making bone broth. Those different types of scraps like onion skins and carrot peelings, they all contain nutrition and you don't want to throw those out. You want to put them into your vegetable scrap bag. But they can also work beautifully for those who don't want to make bone broth but instead want to make a vegetable broth or a mineral broth. And I have recipes where I show you how to do that. Bone broths or vegetable mineral broths make a wonderful base for whenever you're making a soup or a stew, or whenever you're cooking grains like rice or other grains, where you use the bone broth or the vegetable mineral broth in place of water, and that helps boost the nutrition of whatever grain you're serving. In addition to having your chicken carcass scrap bag and your vegetable scrap bag, you also want to have a 3rd scrap bag where you save any little bits and bobs of bread. Those little bread scraps can be used to make croutons, they can be used to make breadcrumbs, and they can also simply be chopped up and used to make a bread soup or a bread salad. So be sure to always have your 3 scrap bags going. Now, I just want to mention, in regards to my chicken scrap bag, if you cook a lot of beef and you have a lot of bones, if you're cooking a lot of beef that has the bone intact, which is always best, you can certainly save that beef bone in a beef bone scrap bag. I don't always have the opportunity to cook a lot of beef, but if you do, be sure that you have maybe a 4th scrap bag that's your beef bone scrap bag. And if you're like me and you don't make a lot of beef, but you occasionally cook some beef on the bone, you can combine chicken and beef bones to make bone broth. You don't have to just limit it to one or the other. So it's okay to throw a beef bone into your chicken carcass scrap bag if you don't have a lot of beef bones to save. Number 2, you want to learn how to create what I call clean out the crisper meals. Once a week, open your vegetable bin in your refrigerator and take out all of the vegetables and inspect them. Those that are beginning to look a little past their prime need to be turned into a meal, and often the easiest meal to turn them into is a soup. Alternatively, If you have saved a few what I like to call bits and bobs of various vegetables that didn't make it into a scrap bag because they weren't maybe 100% scraps, like maybe the lower part of an asparagus, those may be in your crisper as well. And they can be turned into cream soups, they can be turned into dips, they can be turned into a whole variety of things. So when you go through your crisper, be thinking of what can I make with vegetables that look a little past their prime, and what can I do with things, different vegetables that I may have a half or one of, or the bottom of, or whatever the case may be, that may be qualified as just a little bit more than scraps, but I often refer to it as cooking with scraps. And become creative. And as I said, I have recipes on how to make a lot of these things, both clean out the crisper soups as well as cooking with scrap ideas. And I definitely will link to all of those and the recipes that go with them. And the nice thing about making clean out the crisper soups is that they are usually a very nutritious way to introduce a lot of minerals into our diet, because vegetables are very rich in minerals, and often maybe minerals that we're a little bit deficient in. But how easy it can be to chop up maybe all those greens that are looking a little wilted, or that maybe you or your family didn't necessarily immediately like in a saute, and so on and so forth, or in a salad. Even any lettuce that you have can be put into a crisper soup, a clean out the crisper soup. And you can throw in some beans, maybe you've soaked some beans the night before, or even just a can of beans. I have a wonderful recipe for beans and greens. It's an Italian soup that's absolutely delicious. And when you make these clean out the crisper soups, nobody's going to know that maybe those vegetables were a little past their prime. But how wonderful that you have made a meal with these rather than have thrown them into your trash or into your compost. Learning how to use the vegetables that you have in your crisper, either to make, as I said, soups or dips or other creative recipes, is also a wonderful way to save money. We read so much about how much food people waste, and it's often because things in the refrigerator start to look a little, especially in the crisper, look a little wilted, or maybe are becoming a little discolored, or whatever the case may be. But you turn them into a meal and you've saved money and you've eaten nutritiously. And beyond soups and dips, many vegetables can be julienned into strips and tossed with pasta and almost start to look like a gourmet meal. And maybe all you've done is use the green tops from your leeks, and no one's going to know that those were things that may have been tossed into your garbage. So once a week, pull everything out of your crisper, inspect everything, and use up what's getting close to its prime. You're going to save money, and a lot less is going to go into your trash. Start looking at everything in your crisper with a new eye as to how you can reinvent it and use it rather than waste it. And tip number 3, that goes hand in hand with tip number 2, once a week, make a clean out your refrigerator meal. Go through your refrigerator once a week. This is often good to do if you shop on a weekly basis, to do this the day before you go shopping. Look at everything that's in your refrigerator. What is getting close to its prime? What might be left over? What needs to be used up? And think of how you can make a meal out of it. This is something that we can learn from restaurants. They often have to feed the various chefs and cooks that they employ. So what the chefs will do is look in the refrigerator and determine what foods may be a little past their prime that they can serve to their customers. And they, in their wonderful creative knowledge as chefs, figure out how to use what they have and make a meal to feed everyone in their employ. Well, we can do the same thing. And with the internet, it makes it exceptionally easy, because there are so many apps and programs and so on and so forth, websites, where you can go in and you can type, okay, I've got a 1/4 pound of leftover cooked ground beef, or I have a cup of spaghetti, and I have 3 tomatoes, and I have 2 leftover chicken legs, or whatever the case may be. And you can type this in, and you will often be given various recipes that you can make to use whatever it is you have. And when you start getting into the habit of doing this, you're going to become creative yourself and start to think, how can I put this together? How can I put that together? And so on and so forth. And you're going to become an expert at creating clean out the fridge meals. And once you make your clean out the fridge meal, and maybe you've also done a clean out the crisper meal, which in essence they go hand in hand, you can then do an inventory of what you have in your refrigerator, and also at the same time do an inventory of what you have in your freezer, especially if you've put some leftovers in your freezer. You can use those also to make a meal. Then once you've cleaned everything out and you've made a meal and everyone's been well fed and nutritiously fed and everything has been saved from possibly going into the garbage, you've saved money now and you've cleaned out your refrigerator. So now you want to do your inventory, because if you look at what you have, you won't overbuy when you go to the grocery store. And this is especially important when it comes to fresh produce. So now that you've made your meals, maybe one night you did a clean out the crisper meal, and then another night you just did a whole clean out the fridge and a review of what was in the freezer as well meal. Now you do your inventory and you have a much more efficient picture of what you need and a much more efficient shopping list that is probably going to considerably save you money, because you're not going to overbuy. You're going to buy what you need, and then you're going to work your way through the week using up what you've purchased, especially when it comes to fresh food, because it's fresh food that creates the biggest problem in terms of waste for most home cooks. We can tend to overbuy fresh food, then we don't use it up, and then we let 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks pass, and next thing we know, everything's become mushy and rotten and well past its prime, and into the garbage or into the compost it goes. But if you implement these habits where you start scrap bags and then move to clean out the crisper meals and then move to clean out the fridge and the freezer meals, you're going to be way ahead of the game, you're going to save money, and you're going to eat nutritiously. And keep in mind, when you're making these clean out the crisper meals or clean out the entire fridge and maybe freezer meals, you've also got your working pantry and your extended pantry to help you, your prepper pantry. If the terms working pantry and extended or prepper pantry are new to you, they're terms that I use sort of under the umbrella, so to speak, of the term the Four Corners pantry. And the four corners represent your working pantry, where you store your non-perishable foods that you access on a regular basis. Then the second corner being your refrigerator, the third corner being your freezer, and the fourth corner being your extended or your prepper pantry, where you store non-perishable foods that you're able to maybe get on sale or buy in bulk at a discount, so on and so forth, that you then can go shopping in your prepper pantry to restock your working pantry. That can also help considerably to save you money, because you're not dashing out at the last minute, potentially having to buy something at full price that you've run out of. You've taken advantage of sales and bulk buys when available, stored these things in your extended pantry, and can simply use that as a resource when you run out of something in your working pantry. And using items in your working pantry or your extended pantry to supplement your clean out the crisper and clean out the fridge and freezer meals also helps you stay on top of your foods so that you're using them before they begin to expire. How many times have you looked deep maybe into your working pantry and found things that had a best by date from maybe 5 years ago? Now, does it mean that the food has gone bad? No, the U.S. Department of Agriculture here in the United States says that basically canned goods and dried goods and jarred goods, so on and so forth, basically don't go bad. They may go stale, they may develop an off taste, or they may degrade somewhat in nutrition. So they're not necessarily going bad, but the more we can use our non-perishable foods within that best by time, the more nutritious and maybe the more flavorful they're going to be. So developing that system where you have, first in, first out, you keep them organized in your working pantry as well as your extended pantry, and you rely on your working pantry to help supplement any meals you make for that matter, but especially when it's time to make your clean out the crisper or clean out the fridge and freezer meals, is a very good thing to do so that you're never in a situation where you're opening a 5-year-old can or jar of something and you find it's just developed an off flavor or whatever, or an off aroma, and off it goes into the garbage. So the more that you stay on top of this, the better. The more you use these foods and know what you have and become familiar with what you have and rotate everything you have properly, you are going to save considerable money and you're going to waste a lot less food. And again, you're going to be making things that are delicious, traditional home-cooked meals that are also nutritious. And you're not going to be falling prey to going through the drive-through line maybe on the way home from work or wherever the case may be, because you know you've got various foods in your refrigerator, in your freezer, and in your working pantry, in your extended pantry that you can make a meal from. And before we move on to green cooking habit number 4, I want to mention to you that I have a traditional foods, what I call the essential traditional foods pantry list. It's 36 pages long, and you can easily download this over on my website. I'll be sure to put a link underneath this video. And that has all the foods that you will want to think about stocking in your working pantry, in your refrigerator, in your freezer, and in your extended pantry as you move towards creating more and more of a traditional foods kitchen. And it's not just a list of foods. I talk about how to store everything. I have links to recipes to all the foods you may want to think about buying so you're not left high and dry with a bunch of foods that you don't know what to do with. And I also have a lot of information in there, a lot of tips and tricks about how to create an efficient traditional foods kitchen. So I think you'll really enjoy that list. So after you've started your scrap bags, and after you've started implementing clean out the crisper meals, and after you've started implementing clean out the fridge or do a whole fridge and freezer meal, the next thing that you really want to get on top of is always remembering to create an inventory of what you have. And I alluded to this in tip number 3. It's very important that you know what you have in your Four Corners pantry. What foods do you have and what foods are you running low on? And so what foods do you need to restock? And just those foods that you're running low on is what you should be restocking. And doing your inventory so that you know what you have in your refrigerator, in your freezer, in your working pantry, in your extended pantry. Knowing what you have can help you plan your meals accordingly, because you will be able to look in your refrigerator and freezer and know what needs to be used up. And you can look in your working pantry and look at what foods are still within their best by date, but maybe becoming close to passing that and need to be used up. And so that's why doing an inventory and knowing what you have is so important, because that prevents waste. And I have a Four Corners pantry inventory list that's very easy for you to download. There's no email required. You can print out as many copies as you want. You can do an inventory once a week, once a month. I have inventory sheets, and it's all free. I have inventory sheets for inventorying your working pantry, your refrigerator, your freezer, and your extended pantry. And so as you work through these inventories, then you can move on. And I also supply you with the basically a schedule, so to speak, for restocking these, but while staying in your budget, so that you can do your inventory, see what you need, and then plan what you want to buy over a 4-week period. So this works very well whether you shop weekly or every other week or monthly. And you can know how much, based on how much money you have in your food budget, what you want to restock and when. So be sure to download those inventory lists and start implementing that system as soon as possible, even today, so that you know what you have, you know what to use, and you know what to buy. Now, before we move on to tip number 5, I just want to mention that after tip number 5, I have a bonus tip for you. Tip number 5 is to store your food in your refrigerator and in your freezer correctly. Now, what do I mean by correctly? Well, if we want to have a green kitchen, if we want to have a thrifty kitchen, we want to find containers to use that are reusable and that also clearly display what's inside them. We want to get away from using tons of plastic bags and tons of plastic wrap. One of the best things to store our food in is glass. Number 1, it's reusable, and number 2, it's visually appealing because we can easily see what's in it. And when it comes to glass containers, there is such a huge variety today. There are ones that have the snap lids that stay in place and are airtight. There are things that are as simple as canning jars with a lid. And there are even glass containers that are made for being used in the freezer. And the only thing that you need to be aware of is to fill them appropriately so as to always allow for expansion, because when things freeze, they expand. And once you start storing your food in glass, you're going to see every time you open your refrigerator, you're going to see what's in there. The same with your freezer. Organize your freezer, have things in containers that are clear that you can see through, so you know at a quick glance what you have. And the nice thing when it comes to storing things in glass in your refrigerator is that when you open your refrigerator door, you not only see what you have, it also can often look very attractive when you've got all of your different maybe fruits and vegetables and soups and different things. Even leftovers can look better when they're stored in glass. So get away from always using plastic bags and plastic wrap and try to move to storage containers that are reusable. That's one of the best things that we can do to limit what we're putting in our trash and to also just make things look better and probably most likely stay fresher when stored in reusable containers. Now, bonus tip, and this is kind of a little fun, maybe a little, what do they say, tongue-in-cheek in terms of a green cooking tip, a green cooking habit. Definitely consider learning how to garden. Now, don't worry if you don't have a garden. Even if you live in an apartment, all you need is a sunny windowsill, and you can start growing some herbs, you can start growing some cherry tomatoes. There's a lot of things you can do. You can even do sprouts. You can grow sprouts. And speaking of seeds, be sure to check the link in the description underneath this video that'll take you over to my shopping guide. Over there, I have a discount coupon code for you for some of the packages offered by the Survival Garden Seed Company, and they have wonderful collections of seeds. So for the cost of just a few seeds, you can grow your own flat-leaf Italian parsley, you can grow dill, you can grow tarragon, You can grow basil. You can do so many things. And that is really a wonderful habit because you're going to really see the savings that you're going to be able to incur. Because have you seen the price of just a little package of herbs lately at the grocery store? It's a little ridiculous, but you'll be able to grow a big amount of flat leaf Italian parsley, basil, all of these things. And you know what? Not only can you grow herbs and maybe cherry tomatoes too on a sunny windowsill, did you know that you can grow food from some of your scraps? So if things don't make it into a scrap bag and during the clean out the crisper they don't make it into the soup, you can actually try to regrow them into food. An easy place to start is with scallions, or what you might know as green onions. When you get down to the little tip that has the root on it, plop it in some water. It's going to start to sprout and grow you new green onions. And I have a video where I show you how to grow all types of food from scraps. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. And to me, that is one of the ultimate green cooking habits that we can employ in our traditional foods kitchens. Now, if you'd like more tips on how to run a green kitchen, a thrifty kitchen, and make lots of nutritious meals with food that you can prevent from going into your garbage, be sure to click on this video over here where I have a playlist that covers all of that and more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.